Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Tuesday morning over here as we get prepared for the big event of the day, the CPI reads. Everyone fucking loves it now because we're all macro experts. And so the real preparations, at least in my experience, is what comes after that print comes out. Because ultimately, unless you're an insider, there's no way to actually know what the real number will be. But typically there are some, dare I say, relatively, let's say, easier trades on the other side after that data is released and when you see price action start to spike around. Anyways, on a day like today, I like to be looking for a little bit more of the obvious signals, which we'll be going over. And then, of course, I did want to once again subtly shill my Instagram, of which I've been uploading a lot of Bitcoin and trading related content. There is, of course, a link in the description below. And then Bybit has like the last day or two of their promotion where they're offering $1,000 US dollar deposit for $1,000 in the Ethereum contract position, I believe it is. There is a link in the pinned comment section below. Yes, it doesn't necessarily say exactly that, but I can assure you that it does award you those privileges. And if you have any other questions, don't email us, email Bybit because it's their thing. All right, sweet. So let's jump into it right here. And I want to start it off with Dixie yet again because it is important to reiterate, I think, the easier points of this analysis, of which it would be this. For Dixie, representing the dollar index, we do observe 3 drives of bearish divergence on the weekly time frame, so a rather powerful time frame. And yes, I would be looking for this one to work its way down over the next month or two, at least to the 21 exponential average, which is 105.5, working off those bearish divergence drives. And then if things really get crazy, this will not all happen in the same month, by the way, then perhaps down all the way to 102.5. In the following month after that, perhaps, something like that could look about right. Now, with that in mind, what does that essentially mean for risk on assets? Well, if the dollar comes down, the typical relationship is that risk assets will go up. It's not a direct relationship, obviously. The reason why that is because Dixie is representing the dollar's value versus a basket of other fiat currencies, but we have observed that on the very high term timeframes in the past. And so I would say that this would be, a little bit more on the short term, continuation side. Anyways, moving on into the stochastic momentum for CME, not for CME, but for Dixie, we do observe that one is also extreme, actually not necessarily likely to turn down just yet, but we are starting to see it get closer and closer to not just having 3 drops of bearish divergence right here alongside these 1, 2, 3 highs, but also turning down as well. And if we go over to the weekly, what is the magical number right here? Yeah, the magical number is actually about the same, so 107.8. So if you see Dixie come down below those regions after the CPI print a little bit later today, it's going to be a good indication that, yes, the next move very likely does come to the downside for Dixie, which puts upside pressure on price action for risk on assets. And most notably, probably your favorite ones, of which the crypto shitcoins and Bitcoin and all these great, amazing assets. Anyways, let's now go into Bitcoin, as I wanted to follow up first on the 5-day analysis for Bitcoin over here. Again, the 5-day analysis is a volatility versus momentum signature, of which it was governing our major downside buys from about $25,000 to our current lows. And the signal was this: anytime that we did see 5-day BBWP, which represents volatility, get to extreme lows, which was 15 percentile, basically, the average move that we've observed over the past 4 to going on 5 years has been about 42.35% done over the course of just under 37 days. And the first standard deviation, which represents where we expect 68% of the results to kind of fall between, represents the range between about 35% all the way up to 49.5%. Anyways, in this case, we did see the 5-day stochastic momentum turn to the upside upon the last closure last night. So now, as long as Bitcoin's especially above this pivot, 21,800, that remains constant, and we do look at this signal as resolved. And in this particular signal, how long did it take? Took about 35 days, so that is right on track. And we saw about 27% move to the downside, if I can get that proper. So a little bit outside of the context of the lower end of the first standard deviation here. But again, that's where we expect 68% of the results. So it's still within the realm of reason. We did see a relatively, similar signal back and over here in March of 2022 with a 26% move to the upside. This one was a lot shorter in duration, but ultimately, that kind of makes sense. Anyways, we can call this signal resolved now. And the real question is, what happens as it turns up? Well, there's no, there's no resetting on volatility just yet, or at least I wouldn't say that it's fully reset. You can see that BBWP on the 5-day is coming back down yet again. And so what we're probably going to get is something similar to what we saw here, where it goes for one move, and there was actually a short signal right there. Or sorry, it was like a short in duration, but it was a long signal. And actually that was the one that was very similar to the one that we just saw over here, 26% move to the upside in this case. and then it reset quickly after that. And then we got the big one, and that was the big bad explosion, which was governing our biases from about $44,500 all the way down to that wick low at $25,000. And that was the big one. That was a 40% move, or over 40% move in the over the course of 30 days. So could we get something like this over here? Possibly yes. But what we'd expect is we'd expect to kind of come back down a little bit, maybe a little bit more, base off here for like 1 or 2 periods, and then lift off as it is mathematically designed to be doing. We also have a few other examples of similar things back here in 2018 and over here in 2020 June. Anyways, as we get back on a topic, I thought that was rather interesting because when we do combine it with other technicals, of which I'll pull it up over here, we did have, of course, the 5-day close last night, which did confirm regular bullish divergence. Is a bit of a phantom drive right there, but that's alongside the 2-day time frame also printing the same. And if we go to CME, which closes the 5-day today, well, that will also have a chance to confirm regular bullish divergence, which can give us a bit of a bias as far as targeting upside price action coming into, maybe like early October, something like that. Although time is not necessarily like my main thing, but somewhere around the 21 here, which is basically around the last local highs. Let's say a range between about 24.5 to 25.5 or so. Of course, it's not super relevant right now. Have to get through today in order to kind of maintain that composure. But ultimately, I thought that was rather interesting here. Anyways, let me reference my notes really quickly. And yes, I wanted to get onto a major topic of conversation. However, while all of these things are being presented before today's event, it really does make me consider the possibility of a potential trap. So just like yesterday and the day before, do we have a trap confirmed as of right now? Fuck no, we do not. That is very, very important to, I hope, be as abundantly clear about, because sometimes that word can get a little bit mixed up, but fair enough. Anyways, in this case, there is no talk of trap here until this is confirmed as a local high, and then Bitcoin comes back down on a daily closing basis. Even a medium-term time frame closing basis probably gets it as well, although slightly different numbers. And I would say at this point, we'd be using 20,900, or even just 21,000 bucks, probably good enough on a daily. Shorter term time frames, obviously going to be a little bit lower than that at about 20,800. But yes, Bitcoin were to come back down below there, this would be your next sort of trap situation. This would be also confirm hidden bearish divergence on the other side, all the way up to timeframes as high as a 5-day, as we do make higher highs on RSI already, despite not necessarily making lower highs on price action just yet, but operating on, below the last prior high. The 2-day has it in there as well. So yes, if Bitcoin were to do something like that, that would be a good early warning signal, a great indication that yes, there is a major trap ahead, and Bitcoin's very likely going to retest the current lows and probably make new lows from there coming into October. So a lot of that, I suspect, does get expedited by today's event. And I think that actually really kind of wraps up the strong majority of my analysis. I did forget to mention, or did I mention the regular bullish evidence on the 2-day? Yeah, on the 5 days closing today as well. And in the daily, it doesn't have it because it's well and far away. But if we do reference stochastic momentum, I thought that this was also interesting for those timeframes. The daily remains with upside posturing as long as Bitcoin's above 18,550. So that number actually moved down. That pivot point moved down from yesterday to today, which is typically a good sign. And then the 2-day is also freshly turning up after our last major 2-day signal was resolved, by the way. And this one is also pivoted at 18,750. So that is rather interesting, I would say. And also, of course, the weekly stochastic momentum is also pointed up as long as Bitcoin's above 20,700 or so, rounding up right there. So yes, ultimately, I do see still more bullish indications than not for Bitcoin specifically. Short term, we could see some, nasty wicks both ways. Obviously, nothing really changes for me. However, as long as Bitcoin's realistically above about 21,000 bucks, could very easily come down and, spike towards 21.4, 21.5, wipe out all of the late longers, something like that. In fact, short-term timeframes do look like they're probably poised for a pullback. We see some bearish divergence forming over here. If we do go reference short-term timeframe stochastic momentum, it's also turning down. So short-term timeframes very likely do pull back from here, but it really all depends on today's event, and all the price action in between there. In my opinion, is more of a gamble, and the easier, high conviction trades will be had after the event. And then, of course, we got the Ethereum merge tomorrow or the next day, and then after that, I think FOMC maybe, and it's probably not next week, it's probably the week after that. So it's going to be a pretty fucking busy month here, actually. But for right now, short term, a little bit of sideways, probably test a little bit of downside. The real market begins after that fun event later today, however. So I'll leave it right there, and I want to be wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.